Iceland. It's so much more than ice, and this is only the beginning. But first, let's take a look at where on Earth this small country is. Iceland is situated in the North Atlantic, on the edge of the Arctic Circle, halfway between New York and Moscow. It's only a 5 to 6 hour flight from the east coast of the U.S. to Keflavik International Airport. Any guesses as to what the sculpture is on the left? It's called a jet nest. That stainless steel egg is hatching a Concorde. This may be a small country, but they have big ideas.
Our discovery of Iceland starts with a visit to the world's northernmost capital, Reykjavík, and the jewel of its skyline is the Pearl, a glass dome revolving restaurant with a great view of the city. Today, the capital is home to 100,000 people, 40% of Iceland's population. Charming buildings in the old town center date back to when the capital was just a small village. It's only been since the early 1900s that Reykjavík started flowering into a modern society. During its growth, the city has managed to retain the feel of a friendly village while becoming as prosperous and sophisticated as its European neighbors. Reykjavík may be a young city, but it has ancient roots.
Iceland's first settler built his home nearby over 1,100 years ago. The location wasn't chosen on a whim. As was the Viking custom, this Norwegian explorer tossed the high seat pillars of his ship overboard and vowed to settle where the gods washed them ashore. 3 years later, he found them, and in the process, Ingólfur Árnason unwittingly fathered a city.
The most famous Viking explorer of all was Leifur Eriksson, or Leif the Lucky. He's the man who actually discovered North America 500 years before Columbus. Columbus just had a better press agent. Another attraction popular with residents and tourists is Tjörnin, a lake where you can see over 40 species of birds and the world's only Arctic tern colony within a capital city. Just a breadcrumb's throw away from the first settler's farm, wild birds can be lured in for a handout, and it's a great chance to see them up close. Even the majestic whooper swan is not above accepting a bribe. Beautiful days bring out the crowds and an interesting team of players that can be as much fun to watch as the birds.
In the starting lineup today are the Bobbsey twins in their matching Icelandic sweaters. And it's Goldilocks. Here's the wind-up and the pitch. And look, she's a switch pitcher, as good with her left arm as she is with her right. We've got Pretty in Pink on the bench and looking none too happy about it. And my personal favorite, Sweet Cheeks. Yes, they're just irresistible.
A male eider duck is on the receiving end of all this free food, even though his main diet is mussels. Diving ducks have the added advantage of being able to retrieve the bread that is sunk to the lake bottom. The tufted duck is an expert diver. He gets his name from the colic of feathers sticking out the back of his head. Seeing Iceland's largest and perhaps most beautiful wild bird from only a few feet away is reason enough for a visit to Reykjavík's downtown lake. And don't forget the bread.
But swimming isn't just for the birds in Iceland. It's a year-round sport for everyone. Yes, thanks to natural hot springs in this incredible state-of-the-art pool, you can take an exciting trip on a water slide and splash down into 85 degrees Fahrenheit or 30 degrees Celsius water any time of the year. Or just lay back and enjoy a relaxing jet stream massage. Bob up and down under a homemade waterfall, or soak up the precious Arctic sun. A country with a name like Iceland might be the last place you'd expect to swim outdoors all year round. But here, open-air pools are found in most communities, and swimming isn't just for fun, it's a way of life.
From the ultimate in high-tech living, you can cross over into the simplicity of the past at Reykjavík's Árborgar Museum. Buildings from all over the country have been brought here and faithfully restored to preserve Iceland's history. A typical farmhouse from the late 1800s is the centerpiece of this historical village. And here, costume interpreters bring the past to life. Inside, all of your senses become immersed in history as recipes from ancient cookbooks are prepared in time-honored traditions. A treat similar to pancakes were fried and sprinkled with sugar as a special afternoon dessert when guests were expected to come calling. Upstairs, local elders are proud to demonstrate the handiwork that once enabled them to survive. One important task was sewing shoes from the skin of a fish. Fish skin shoes, which this woman wore until 1920. These everyday work shoes were fashioned while the sea catfish skin was wet, and then worn till they were dry for a perfect fit.
The spinning wheel has been turning for hundreds of years as women work to create enough skeins of wool to keep their families warm during the long winters. Until the early 20th century, women were still spinning wool, and Denmark was still ruling Iceland. But time marches on. And today, the biggest celebration of the year is on June 17th, Independence Day. As the trumpets sound, a parade of patriots mark the rebirth of the Icelandic Republic in 1944 and the end of hundreds of years as a Danish colony. Iceland is a young republic with a long history. Before the dark ages of foreign rule, its system of government, legal code, and literature were centuries ahead of their time. As they enter the 21st century, the people carry with them a strong national identity and a cultural heritage of which they are extremely proud.
Regaining independence has not meant a return to the past, but rather drawing inspiration from the past to shape the future. From traditional folk dancing to modern rock and roll, there's something for everyone during the day's festivities. In Reykjavík, thousands of people enjoy events that go on from early morning to the wee hours. It's a swinging good time for all. Even one of Iceland's mysterious and legendary trolls came out of its hidden world to add magic and merriment. Carrying on with the carnival-like atmosphere, these blossoming beauties are literally playing flower girls to the sunshine queen of the parade. Serenading the court is the Saran Wrap Band, whose bizarre sound seems to have turned them into the Pied Pipers of the country's brides. But what could be more appropriate on Independence Day than having the Icelandic flag painted on your cheeks? Or across your whole face. The cross of Nordic nations down your nose against a face of deep-sea blue. With their colors flying every June 17th, Icelanders revel in the rush of freedom. Their past has been left behind, and they're floating on air.
Iceland has some of the cleanest air in the world. This isn't pollution. It's only steam whirling off the chimneys of a geothermal power plant that accidentally became the setting for one of the world's most unique bathing spots, the Blue Lagoon. When it's cold outside, there's no dawdling around. As my wife Denice demonstrates, you make a mad dash into this hot runoff water. That's definitely better. Now, effluent is not something Denice would ordinarily think of bathing in, but this is actually a clean byproduct of the power plant, which uses the subterranean hot water to produce heat and electricity. As a bonus, it also created this surreal spa. If you hang around the dock, they'll even come out and serve you their special Blue Lagoon champagne, and stay as long as you like. But when you're cooked, you're done. This constantly renewed mineral-rich water is very relaxing. And for the ultimate in European beauty, soft skin and a glowing complexion, try a mask of Blue Lagoon mud. It's unbelievable. Just ask my wife.
More importantly, a bather with psoriasis noticed that the lagoon improved his condition, and scientific studies later confirmed its healing powers. It's an intriguing place any day, but when the sun starts to shine, a wonderful change occurs. Billowing steam now evokes a beautiful dreamlike quality that highlights the contrast between super technology and ethereal blue waters. The Blue Lagoon is among Iceland's hottest tourist destinations, but on long summer nights, just before closing, you might find you have the whole place to yourself.
It's only a 40-minute drive from Reykjavík and 15 minutes from the airport. So if you're in Iceland for a long vacation or just a couple of hours, the Blue Lagoon will give you a warm, exotic welcome. At the lagoon, boiling underground water has been pumped to the surface. In other places, it just explodes. In fact, the term geyser is actually an Icelandic word that means gusher. There she blows. This reliable hot spring erupts every few minutes and can reach 66 feet high or 20 meters. But its majestic beauty can best be experienced in slow motion.
It's truly awesome to stand and marvel at nature's power, but it's exhilarating to physically experience it, and a whitewater rafting trip is just the thing. We're headed down the Vitá River, and we're assured its strong glacial currents will bring plenty of rapids. Now this is a participation sport, so everyone paddles in concert and on command. Our journey is taking us along a passageway carved through a fissure in the lava. For thousands of years, the water has followed the same course from the glaciers to the sea, and today we're going with it. Our enthusiastic guide and expert helmswoman for the trip is Anna. With her at the stern and some kayakists along for spectacle and safety, and everyone all decked out in flotation suits and life jackets, we're on our way.
Once the rapids have been run, then there's time to gaze up and admire the water-sculptured cliffs of the canyon. But all too soon, it's time to head into shore. The ride is over, but our adventure has just begun.
Before Denice and I came to Iceland, it seemed like a remote northern island with just a cold-sounding name. But since we've been traveling and filming here, well, we've discovered that it certainly does get cold, even in the middle of summer, but it's a beautiful country and has areas just teeming with wildlife.
Although there are no reptiles or amphibians and only one indigenous land mammal, there are literally millions of seabirds. And of course, the place to find them is along the coast.
Can you imagine a lush forest growing here? It did a few million years ago. Since then, layers of lava and scarring by glaciers have created one of the world's most magnificent bird cliffs, Reykjavík. Different species of seabirds nest on the lava ledges, and puffins occupy the penthouse of this high-rise. To me, the deluxe view seems reason enough for the choice, but puffins locate here for loftier reasons, nesting sites.
I would guess that puffins are one of the best known and loved birds in the world. looking like they're dressed in little tuxedos and wearing clown makeup, you can certainly see what makes them so endearing. In Iceland, they're the most common breeding bird with an estimated population of 8 to 10 million.
From the puffin's point of view, standing on the top of Reykjavík, it's about 1,000 feet or 330 meters straight down to the sea. From here, they're flying off the edge of Iceland, the westernmost tip of Europe, but to the puffin, it's simply the edge of their world. With its irresistible charm, it's not surprising the puffin has been named Iceland's national emblem.
We had some very unusual experiences hauling everything from one location to another. Here we're getting a lift out to explore an enormous fjord on Iceland's northwest coast, where a large percentage of the country's seabird population nests on thousands of small islands. This rocky isle is covered with a colony of shags. Unlike their shy cormorant cousins, shags are completely unafraid of people, which made them very easy to hunt and was almost the demise of this handsome bird. If you're a shag chick, the way to get a meal is to plunge your head as far down your parent's throat as you possibly can and pull out some partially digested, regurgitated fish. It's positively nutritious.
This begging behavior is what encourages the parents to give up the goods. Although this juvenile seems unconcerned, some commotion in the crowded colony can cause a parent to aggressively defend its young. A huge yellow mouth and loud call threatens others to stay away. While I film, Denice got all the sound on tape. Nearby, others are feeding. Watch as the chick's beak pushes out the back of its parent's neck with each groping thrust for food. With as many as 3 chicks per nest, this undoubtedly gives new meaning to the phrase, a pain in the neck.
We're leaving this rocky outpost, but the day is not over. This is the land of the midnight sun. The Arctic tern spends more hours in daylight than any other animal on the globe. It's a very common bird in Iceland, but only in the summer when it's here nesting and raising its young. Once the job is done, this champion flyer heads south to the Antarctic. It's the longest migration of any bird in the world, but the Arctic tern gets to enjoy a never-ending summer.
In the maze of small isles in this fjord, you can also find Iceland's largest bird of prey, Europe's only eagle. It's not on a towering cliff, but a small bit of rock offshore where these white-tailed eagle chicks sit in their unpretentious nest, just a hollow in the grass lined with touches of seaweed.
It's mid-July and these eaglets are about 7 weeks old. At this point in their life, their parents spend hours at a time off hunting, and it won't be until the eaglets are about 11 or 12 weeks old before they'll start hunting with their parents.
There are only a couple of dozen nesting pairs of white-tailed eagles in Iceland. Accused of carrying off lambs, they were shot and poisoned until nearly extinct. Since 1913, they've been protected by law, but this hasn't helped. It would be a tremendous loss if this magnificent bird no longer soared in these skies.
Even four-wheel drive is rough going on this deserted peninsula in Iceland's extreme northeast corner. What's prompting our journey and this precarious descent is the site of one of Iceland's 5 gannet colonies. No space is wasted in a gannetry. Searching among this carpet of snow-white seabirds, it may take several passes for a parent to find its own nest. But find each other they do, and a ceremony ensues to bind the pair together. Obviously, this chick isn't ready to bind with anything yet. It will be at least 4 years before this youngster starts courting. They grow quickly here in the gannet colony. The chick retrieves its meal of fish the same way as the shags.
Throughout the breeding season, gannets bring in new cargoes of grasses and seaweed to shore up the nest for their one chick. Often the load includes bits of twine and fishnet. The amount of plastic material in the nest is not only an indicator of ocean pollution, but can also result in a gannet's death. A gannet's saber-like bill can be used for bonding or bickering. In these close quarters, each tiny territory is rigorously defended. Gannets are the largest seabird in the North Atlantic. With a wingspan of nearly 6 feet or 2 meters, they perform a kind of aerial ballet. Today, birds like these magnificent gannets are the only permanent residents on this remote coast. Humans, when they appear, are merely spectators.
Down on the country's southeast coast, a farmer will take you out by tractor across the sprawling black volcanic sands, deposited here by the meltwaters of receding glaciers. The distant cape is one of Iceland's nature reserves. It rises out of the sea with a backdrop of Europe's largest ice cap. This expanse is the largest breeding ground for great skuas in the northern hemisphere. Skuas are classic avian pirates, or kleptoparasites. Performing aerial acrobatics, they twist and turn, attempting to steal a fish. In the end, none of them actually got it. Young puffins not ready for survival can become food for the skua. Besides being pirates, they're also scavengers. Their scientific name means cleansers. A very competitive and aggressive nature does not permit sharing among skuas. Others wait for scraps, since they're no match for these birds.
Each year, a skua meets its lifetime mate on the same breeding grounds. This cape was once home to Iceland's first settler. Today, skuas nest here among the grasses, while sheep graze all around them, as they have for centuries. Each pair only raises one chick. Before fledging at 6 or 7 weeks old, it spends most of its time wandering around the territory under the watchful eye of its formidable parents. Trying to find a place from which to film and record the skuas undisturbed was a challenge. When it comes to protecting their young, skuas are fearless, as we found out. They are considered one of the boldest and most ferocious defenders of home and family in the bird world. They dive bomb with precision and can deliver a nasty blow. Coming at us from all directions, it was difficult to tell where to move. Until finally the adult felt we were an acceptable distance away. In Icelandic, they call it a wasteland. Yet within this desert lie oases of beauty and life.
You can literally drive around Iceland on the 900-mile or 1,500-kilometer-long ring road, and some of the most spectacular scenes along the way are the tremendous variety and volume of waterfalls.
Iceland's countless waterfalls are a sign that geologically it's a young, growing country. This is because it lies along the mid-Atlantic ridge, where volcanoes send up fresh lava, at times creating new land, like the Westman Islands. In 1963, one of the only islands ever formed during recorded history erupted onto the scene, Surtsey, today a protected area for researching how island life is established.
Aboard the deck of a small fishing vessel, we set out to explore these volcanic islands just off Iceland's southeastern shore. Killer whales are numerous here. The one with the tallest fin is the male, leader of the pack. But it's the cliff faces where the greatest flurry of activity takes place. Each of the 15 small islands is like a miniature picture of Iceland itself, and together they make up one of the most important seabird haunts in all of Europe. Seeing the cliffs by boat was impressive, but the best way is to climb ashore and get right up there.
This peaceful view is deceiving, considering what's just over the edge. Here there's an overwhelming riot of sights, sounds, and smells. In spite of the apparent chaos, returning adults invariably manage to locate and feed only their offspring. These birds, appearing to defy the laws of gravity, are murres. Relatives of the colorful puffin, they might well be described as their conservative cousins.
When you have wings, you can afford to attempt gravity-defying feats. But when you don't, whatever it takes, the risk is worth it.
To be here just a ledge away from thousands of seabirds is such an incredible thrill for me. The other thrill is just being here on this ledge, which I find very scary, especially when I have to walk around. But for these murres and kittiwakes, these narrow rocky sills are their ideal nesting habitat.
Kittiwakes choose a tiny ledge on which to build their nests. Few chicks die from falls because they keep their backs to the cliff and rarely move except to feed. Murres take a different approach. They don't build a nest at all and crowd together on wider ledges. Fulmars nest here too, however they prefer their ledges to be more enclosed. These birds are also known as tube noses. This extremely large nostril secretes sea salt and gives them an incredible sense of smell. It's thought that they are able to find food, nest sites, and each other by smell alone. moving from the cliff face back to the island's grassy slopes, another element of Iceland's environment was in full force. The wind was blowing so hard, even walking far from the cliff's edge was a challenge. However, this was perfect weather for puffins. Since their stubby little wings are not designed for great flying ability, but rather for propelling them underwater after fish, the strong wind gave them just the lift they needed to look somewhat like graceful flyers. As this puffin prepares to land, it's totally dependent on the wind to arrive smoothly, or at all. Today it was a breeze.
Puffins have been very important throughout Iceland's long history. In this harsh environment, they were once an important source of food for survival. Today, tradition has turned into sport, and puffins are still caught on the wing for their dark, gamey meat. Each year, about 200,000 non-breeding birds are captured in long-handled nets. Icelanders are very sensitive to the world's view of them. When asked how they can kill puffins, they answer, "Other people eat chickens, confined in small cages that never see the light of day. Puffins, at least, are free and wild until the moment they are caught." Unlike whales, despite centuries of hunting, puffins still nest here in greater numbers than anywhere else on Earth.
The steaming slopes of Fire Mountain are still warm to the touch. It's a reminder of the fiery ordeal that created this volcanic peak here on Heimaey.
It all happened when what was believed to be an extinct volcano began to erupt in the early hours of January 23, 1973. By incredible coincidence, the entire fishing fleet was in the harbor, and every one of the 5,300 islanders were safely evacuated to the mainland. As the people left the shattered security of their home, they could see the mile-long or 1.6-kilometer fissure that had cracked open without warning on the outskirts of town. In the first 12 hours, it spewed out 30 million tons of lava and ash. As the eruption raged, fiery lava sent house after house up in flames. In the end, 2/3 of the homes were damaged or destroyed. Two weeks after the eruption began, it was obvious that the greatest danger was from the wall of lava moving towards the best harbor in southern Iceland and the very lifeline of the local community. But how could it be stopped? They tried building barriers of ash to stop the lava, but the walls weren't strong enough. Then an Icelandic physicist suggested pumping seawater onto the approaching lava to cool it. A wall of chilled lava might act as a dam to stop the flow. So for 3 months, cannons pumped over 1 million gallons, 43 million liters of water a day. The effort succeeded, and the invaluable harbor was protected. But the eruption continued, and with it hundreds of tons of volcanic debris hailed down until everything was covered in lava and ash. This inscription means, "Because I live, ye shall live also." The islanders wondered if they had been forgotten.
Today, except for a volcano in their backyard, the town and harbor look better than ever, and the people speak of time as either before or after the eruption. The cliffs surrounding Heimaey are home to millions of puffins, and on late August nights, fledgling chicks no longer fed by their parents leave their burrows in search of food. Confused by the lights, thousands of pufflings flutter down into the town. And to the rescue come excited children armed with cardboard boxes. Without their help, these still flightless chicks could become prey for the town pets. Well, maybe not this one. Once safe in the box, the children take the puffins home for the night. The next morning, a steady stream of families and children bring their treasures to the shore and fling them out to the freedom of the sea. Each young rescuer is carrying on a tradition that has been continuing here for over 100 years. Given a second chance, this young puffin will spend its life at sea, until one day it returns to nest on the cliffs of Heimaey.
Off the shores of the opposite coast, Drangey rises majestically from the midst of a northern fjord, and every spring, local people come here to keep another, more ancient and dangerous custom alive. Their captain and mentor is Jan Eriksson. He also brings tourists here, not to participate in this custom, but to enjoy the rugged beauty of the sheer volcanic cliffs. From the only landing place, loads of heavy equipment must be carried up the steep path to the summit. This annual ascent has been made by Icelanders for over a millennium. Jan himself has come here for decades to practice and perfect the time-honored tradition. Now, as one generation surrenders to the next, he helps his daughter suit up for the event. While the equipment is carefully anchored, Austa makes the final adjustments for radio contact with her brother. He is stationed on the edge as she begins her daring descent, supported only by the rope and the strength of the team. Her safety is in their hands. This is not something for the faint of heart or those given to vertigo. She's going over the edge of a sheer cliff, 650 feet or 200 meters high. So what's the purpose of this perilous performance? The harvest of seabird eggs.
Collecting while dangling from a rope may seem like an unreasonable risk today, but in ages past, Icelanders would have gone hungry without the brave ones who gathered food from these cliffside pantries every spring. Each egg Austa finds is gently tucked into a hay-filled backpack, then on she goes looking for the next. But she only takes eggs from the first nesting attempt, so the birds will lay another egg and still raise their young. The fun of it all is a group effort. But the courage belongs to one, Austa, the only woman to ever collect eggs off the cliffs of Drangey.
It was a great privilege to experience such a dramatic example of Iceland's history, savor the rare delicacy of wild seabird eggs, and bathe in the soft glow of the midnight sun. Icelanders' ancient yet vibrant heritage seems to flow from deep inside their souls. It creates their character, like the lava that creates their country. In the wake of Viking longboats, cruise ships from around the world come to the northern port of Akureyri, just south of the Arctic Circle. Some visitors are attracted here for the challenge and novelty of playing golf in the midnight sun on the world's most northerly course. Although the fairways are long on rocks and short on trees, where else can you play at 1 in the afternoon or 1 in the morning? Each year, around the first day of summer, the Akureyri Club invites golfers to take a swing at the Arctic Open. Fun is more important than serious competition, and here the beauty of the sun can be the game's greatest reward.
In a country where sheep outnumber people nearly 2 to 1, good-looking greens are also important to farmers. The Icelandic sheep is a unique breed with an impressive family tree. Their direct descendants arrived with the first Viking settlers in the 9th century. And in their own way, sheep have had almost as much impact on the history of Iceland as people. Watch that lamb's tail. Ah, the joy of nursing. And to encourage Mom to keep the milk coming, a punch in the udder is just the thing. Is that contentment or what? Until eventually Mom decides we've all had enough.
But if for some reason a ewe can't provide nourishment, then the children willingly take on the task. Icelandic agriculture is still based on small family-operated farms, and everyone has a job. Artificial hormones are strictly forbidden, so once able, this lamb will grow naturally, grazing in the wild. Given the chance, with her tremendous love of animals, Denice couldn't pass up this opportunity for a warm, fuzzy fix. Although traditional sheep farming is now declining, for hundreds of years it was Iceland's staff of life.
When the Vikings came, they also brought their horses. Since then, not a single horse has been imported into the country, and horses that are exported can never return. So every Icelandic foal can claim fine breeding and a long, pure lineage. For centuries, this hardy, sure-footed horse was the only form of transportation and an indispensable companion in this rugged land. Today, horse riding is Iceland's #1 leisure activity. Throughout the summer, riding clubs everywhere hold various competitions to show off the country's finest.
But what makes Icelanders truly proud of their unique horse is an additional gait which is almost unknown in other breeds. Watch the difference. The rider is barely moving. They say he could drink a glass of champagne without spilling a drop. Partly because of this, these animals are gaining popularity with horse lovers around the world. But it's their gentleness, intelligence, and beauty that makes them a living symbol of Icelandic heritage.
With their livestock on board, the Vikings sailed to Iceland to become farmers. Little did they know that one day it would be done under glass. Today, most of the country's homegrown produce comes from greenhouses, and about 135 growers keep the people nearly self-sufficient in their favorite vegetables. Inside is a balmy climate where grapes are grown just to prove it's possible. But tomatoes are the main crop, and in a garden under glass, space is at a premium, so they're trained to grow up, not out. Guðfinnur and his wife Ati are among the farmers who would like Iceland to go all organic. They have been gardening without synthetic chemicals for over a decade. To get rid of plant pests, they either use a natural soap spray or introduce beneficial predator insects.
Once again, the advantages of living on a volcanic island come into play. Iceland's 37 acres or 15 hectares of greenhouses are heated using natural underground hot water, radiated through metal plates. Þórður Halldórsson, another long-time organic grower, also uses beneficial insects. Bumblebees pollinate his plants, and extra pollen supplements their diet. Down the aisles of greenhouses and grocery stores everywhere, people decide, organically grown or chemically produced. Farmers will grow what the public demands, and today, calls for healthy products and a healthy planet are being heard more and more. The future of an organic Iceland looks bright.
Iceland's waters are 8 times the size of her land, and it is by harvesting the sea, not the soil, that Icelanders make their living as a nation. Cod have been the most important fish in the nets, but worldwide overfishing has necessitated an increase in the variety of the catch. On this vessel, lumpfish are a small part of the 1.5 million tons of fish sold annually. The people here are more dependent on fisheries than any other country. Fish and fish products like caviar make up about 80% of Iceland's total exports.
Unfortunately, the nets are not selective. They entangle anything that swims along. And diving birds like murres are caught as effectively as fish. Recent reports estimate that nearly 1 million seabirds drowned annually in fish nets around the world. As with many of our purchases, the true cost of eating fish is far greater than the price we pay at the counter. Another UN report estimates that globally, even 1/3 of all the fish caught are tossed overboard as garbage. However, fulmars do benefit. Because of fishing industry scraps, the number of fulmars has increased steadily throughout the North Atlantic. In Iceland, campaigning for clean ocean waters and adhering to strict fish quotas is helping the industry stay afloat.
Traveling by land can be rougher than the sea in Iceland's remote regions, but incredible scenery makes the journey well worth it. Along the coast of a particularly scenic fjord is one of the largest breeding grounds for eider ducks in Iceland. These sociable birds crowd hundreds of nests together on the grassy shoreline.
Eiders get top prize in 2 categories, the most abundant duck in Iceland and the largest duck in the Northern Hemisphere. In the spring, the drakes are all decked out in black and white formal wear, making the female look quite drab in comparison. Her practical dress is designed for camouflage rather than courting, an activity this male is eagerly pursuing. Although males leave incubating the eggs entirely to their mates, during the beginning of the nesting season, they continue to hang around the breeding ground. The clutch is kept protected in a soft bowl of down shed from the female's breast and warmed by her own body heat. But in Iceland, that's not the whole story.
Every spring, over 5,000 eider ducks return from the sea to nest at Mýrar in the West Fjords. For generations, the farm families here have protected the birds, and in return, they've been provided with a very interesting occupation.
Harvesting one of the lightest, strongest, warmest, and most resilient natural materials known, eider down. The ducks return to the same nesting places year after year, and feeling safe here, they hardly mind being moved so farmers can gather their down. Today, a young friend is learning the first step in the painstaking process that will eventually result in stuffing for a pillow or quilt.
Valdemar and his brother are among 250 eider-down farmers carrying on this 1,000-year-old Icelandic tradition. Bergsvein only collects a small amount of the fluffy mass while the duck is still sitting on her eggs. For now, she is gently returned to a slightly smaller nest. After her eggs hatch, the farmers hope to find the empty nests before the wind blows the light tufts of down away. It takes the collected and cleaned contents of 60 nests to produce one genuine eider-down duvet. Now you know why they're so expensive. It's the beginning of June, and in some nests, the next generation is ready to come out of their shell and take a crack at life. Watching the birth of these wild ducklings was the highlight of the afternoon. And who could resist this opportunity for a warm, fuzzy fix?
Within about 24 hours after hatching, the eider ducklings are dry and they leave the nest to follow their mothers out to sea. However, if you don't have webbed feet and warm feathers, the next best way to explore Iceland's fjords is by sea kayak. Experience isn't necessary. Denice had never been in one of these crafts before, but she was quickly able to propel herself in the desired direction. It's all in the wrist action, instructed her experienced and knowledgeable guides Ottar and Oskar. They are part of a team who offer the first and only sea kayaking expeditions in Iceland. Getting face to face with a harbor seal is one of the advantages of this silent travel. Alone in the hull of your boat, there's a feeling of being totally immersed in the surroundings, a part of rather than apart from nature. On return from foraging at sea, some eiders gather, unbothered by our presence. 22 centuries ago, the Greek explorer Pytheas wrote of a place 6 days north of Britain. He called it Ultima Thule, the most northerly island in the world. Today, Ultima Thule expeditions invite you to explore this island with them, Iceland by kayak.
Mývatn district of Iceland, and it's an incredibly rich and exciting area. Not only is it one of the most volcanically active regions on Earth, but the lake itself supports the largest population of breeding ducks in the world.
So it's the drama of the landscape and the abundance of wildlife and how the people interact with this unique combination of nature that Denice and I had the thrill of discovering.
A trip to Iceland is not complete without coming to explore this geological and birding hotspot. It's an oasis of life surrounded by a volcanic desert. Mývatn is a meeting place. It's located at a geographical crossroads where birds normally found on one side of the Atlantic or the other meet species who generally breed up in the Arctic or down in more southerly climes. It's not just the sheer number of birds, but the tremendous variety of species that raises the blood pressure of enthusiastic birders. Over 40 different kinds of birds nest here, and there isn't another place on Earth where the same mixture of species can be found. Red-throated loons are a striking example of the northern nesters.
Spring is a great time to be here. Drakes in their breeding plumage outnumber females and are usually the ones excitedly displaying to potential mates. However, in this case, it's the female scaup doing the pursuing. The male doesn't hang around long after mating and egg-laying are complete. But in the meantime, he will protect her and his territory from any real or perceived threat. On the crowded ponds and marshes around Mývatn, males must all keep their distance. At this time of year, tensions run high, and one upset old squaw can lead to another. Every Icelandic species of duck breeds in and around Mývatn, and many are more numerous here than anywhere else in the country, or even in all of Europe. The Laxá River adds to the significance and diversity of the Mývatn wetland area. As it drains the lake, it provides a perfect breeding site for one of Iceland's only North American ducks, the harlequin.
The fast-flowing water is the ideal habitat for the harlequin ducks, and the male harlequin is one of the most beautiful ducks in the world. And the reason why they come here is because this is also the ideal habitat for what they eat, and that is the little creatures that you see on this rock. These are the black fly larvae, and what the harlequins do is they actually dive underwater and they can use their beak to scrape the black flies right off the rock. But the black fly larvae don't stay underwater on these rocks. What they do is they emerge from the surface as adults, and that's what you see are the adult black flies flying all around me. And this wouldn't be so bad except for their biting insects, so they can be very annoying. We all have experience with biting insects, but they are very essential to the ecology of the Mývatn area, and without them, many species, including the harlequin, would decline.
Harlequins aren't found on the lake. At home in the river, they make their way up and down the current as if it were their own personal water slide. As they go, the harlequins add a splash of color to the short Icelandic summer. With such exceptional waterfowl populations, the Mývatn district has been declared an internationally significant wetland, as well as an Icelandic nature reserve. We came here to discover why this area is such a mecca for bird life. What we found was an interconnected web of rare and unusual conditions that all start with how Mývatn got its name. Despite its masses of waterfowl, Mývatn's name honors the area's other most notable inhabitants, billions of midges. Fortunately, they're non-biting midges, and believe it or not, Denice found it amazing to be surrounded by this swarm of males, performing a mating dance to attract females. Even the sheep didn't seem too bothered.
As they swarm, males are using their antennae to pick up the pitch of a female's flight buzz. Once they detect her in the swarm, she is immediately joined by a male and leaves to mate. After mating, the females come to the water to lay their eggs, and about a year later, another cycle of midges emerge as adults. But some never lift off the water. They are plucked from the surface and provide a feast for red-necked phalaropes, black-headed gulls, and waterfowl of various varieties. Their colossal numbers make midges the most important source of food for the majority of birds at Mývatn, which means Midge Lake. Some birds, like the tufted duck, don't even wait for the adults to emerge. They dive underwater and gorge on the immature midges burrowed in the mud. With specialized beaks for straining, they skim the lake bottom and leave behind dark telltale trails where they filtered out the worm-like larvae.
If midges and their larvae are the reason most of the ducks are here, why are the midges here? That story takes us back out to Iceland's location as the largest peak along the mid-Atlantic ridge, a mountain range under the sea where the Earth's crust is playing a tug-of-war. As the country is pulled apart, periodically rows of volcanic craters spew out lava to fill in the cracks. In fact, Iceland is mainly a mountain of lava. The Mývatn district straddles this huge fissure in the earth where the land is literally coming apart at the seams. And the ground around Mývatn speaks loudly of this dramatic upheaval. Roaring fumaroles belch steam and volcanic gases heated from far below. In other areas, seething cauldrons of bubbling clay waft the delightful sulphurous fragrance of rotten eggs. Hot underground water has dissolved the rock below and created a kind of thick mineral soup that constantly plops up out of the pot. This geothermal power source also heats rivers of water that flow underground, and they bring our story back to the surface of the lake.
Here in the northeast corner of Mývatn is where warm water springs enter the lake, and the temperature of the water is about 30 degrees Celsius, 85 degrees Fahrenheit. Now these springs are very important because they add an abundance of silica to the lake, which the warm water has dissolved out of the rocks on its way here.
The compound silica is used in the shells of diatoms, microscopic yellow-brown algae that grow here in such numbers they cover all the plants and form a thick layer of sediment on the bottom of the lake. We use a type of silica every day, glass. In addition to silica, diatoms grow so well here because Mývatn is also rich in another nutrient that all plants need.
This spring entering the southeast corner of Mývatn is a fresh 5 degrees Celsius or 40 degrees Fahrenheit. The cold water is bringing phosphorus to the lake, which it's washed from the lava rocks on the way here.
Speaking of cold, about 60 miles or 100 kilometers south is Europe's largest glacier. The lake lies in its rain shadow, which means most of the rain and snow fall on the top of the glacier instead of Mývatn. Less precipitation means more sunlight, and that gives the lake another important ingredient for plant growth. Because Mývatn is so shallow, the sun can reach the entire bottom of what is Iceland's fourth largest lake. So lots of silica, sun, and nutrients make the diatoms flourish. And guess who eats diatoms? Mývatn's 40 different varieties of midge larvae. Which all brings us back to the beginning. The birds gorge on midges that emerge from the larvae that fed on the diatoms that covered the bottom of the lake that was formed in Iceland. But the story doesn't end here. The food chain continues. Large populations of three-spined sticklebacks also eat midges and are themselves the staple diet for many of Mývatn's other birds.
Duck-like divers such as the horned grebe feed on sticklebacks and rarely raise their young anywhere else in Iceland. Parents provide a ferry service for their zebra-clad youngsters, and during the chicks' first week of life, they also supply them with food. At least they try. This stickleback seems a bit too big to swallow. In it goes, and out it comes. In it goes, and out it comes. Until finally the adult tears it in two, and the chick manages to get it down. Now that Junior's stuffed, he's ready to climb aboard the gravy train and settle in for a much-needed nap.
In Mývatn, waterfowl have also fed the people. For 1,000 years, their eggs provided an essential source of food. Today, necessity has turned into another tradition, proudly handed down to the children. Finding the nests of the most abundant species and taking only the freshest eggs is an art and a science. If the sun still shines brightly through the egg, it's a keeper. But at least 4 eggs are always left in the nest for the female to incubate. These days, about 10,000 free-range eggs are collected each year, and duck populations still thrive.
All those eggs can't be eaten at once, so they're preserved, and I use the term lightly, as tradition dictates. Layers of raw eggs are buried in sheep dung ash. Yes, you heard correctly. The ash comes from burning the dried sheep manure in their smokehouses. After 6 months to a year, the eggs are eaten hard-boiled. Cooking only occurs outside because no one wants the smell in their house, tradition or no. The result looks something like Swiss cheese, but tastes more like the strongest Limburger ever. The custom today is to eat this delicacy at a winter holiday celebrating Icelandic heritage, but we were treated to a special summer sampling. We decided it was an acquired taste.
Although eggs are fair game, ducks haven't been hunted in Mývatn for centuries. Still, they were very wary, and camouflage of one sort or another was needed to get a good shot. The Red Shank alarm service didn't help. It kept blowing our cover and alerting every bird to our presence. However, once in the blind, patience was rewarded. A female scaup appeared with her ducklings in tow. As a single parent, she locates the best dining spots and keeps guard while her precocious chicks venture off in search of emerging midges. Nature has made her task somewhat easier by providing instinctively obedient youngsters. Listen for her call. She only has to call once, and all 9 ducklings immediately come rushing in for a safety check. It will be about 5 weeks before her dependents can fly off and fend for themselves.
Here's another attempt at disguise. I'm sitting in a belly boat equipped with a camera and CB radio and trying to look like a clump of floating vegetation. How am I doing? Well, the Red Shank wasn't fooled either. This pair of scaup paddling by was encouraging. Then John directed me towards the raft of Goldeneye, since you can only paddle the boat backwards. These drakes have gathered to begin molting, having left their mates to tend the chicks. But it didn't take long for them to leave us too. Oh well, it was fun to try.
Only birds in flight and people on wings can get crowning views of how volcanoes have adorned the land. This huge crater erupted 2,500 years ago in a mighty explosion that lasted little more than a day and created the most dominating feature around Mývatn. But not all of Mývatn's volcanoes are extinct. This area was the site of 9 eruptions during the 1970s and 80s. Eerie vents reaching down into the bowels of the earth show where the land turned inside out and lava flowed onto the surface. A gaping fissure exposes another entrance to the underworld. Its mysterious subterranean chambers are filled with pools of scalding spring water, heated by the recent eruptions. An underground tunnel reveals the path of a lava river that once drained from the channel. On the surface, the Earth's deep-seated forces look like paths of destruction, until we remember this is the very source of Iceland's existence.
On the east shore of Mývatn is a mystery world of lava formations unique in all the country. Haunting arches rise from the bed of a 2,000-year-old lava lake. As molten lava drained from below, the hardened crust of the roof collapsed, gouging the pillar walls as they slid down. In Icelandic, the area is called Dimmuborgir, dark castles. Although Mývatn receives less precipitation than anywhere else in the country, the north winds can bring summer rains. And this was the only thing that dampened the Red Shank alarm.
The story of Mývatn is also one of people, their dependence and impact on the area's unique ecosystem. Agricultural land all around the lake has provided a livelihood for centuries. Cows may look harmless, but overgrazing is a serious problem in this protected wetland area. And today another industry is mining the very basis of Mývatn's food chain. The thick layer of diatoms covering the lake bed are being dredged up and pumped to a factory processing the silica in their shells.
The sediment travels over a kilometer to where it is cleaned and dried, then exported for use as a filler in paint and toothpaste and a filtering agent for fluids like oil and beer. Hundreds of thousands of tons of diatomaceous earth have been removed from the lake. In my hand is the foundation of Mývatn's ecology and a major source of its economy. The company feels its removal prevents the lake from filling in. Environmentalists contend that its removal will destroy the wildlife. Biologists working on Iceland's first environmental impact assessment are conducting in-depth studies on lake conditions and wildlife behavior. Stickleback and midge populations are monitored using specially designed traps, which collect random samples. All the research indicates that dredging is literally taking the bottom out of Mývatn's pyramid of life.
Unraveling the ecology of Mývatn was like looking for clues to a great mystery. For Denice and I, discovering and filming its story reminded us that each facet of life depends on every other. We are all one, parts of a whole. The conservation of Mývatn is a microcosm of the problem facing communities everywhere. How do we sustain the balance and diversity of nature so it can continue sustaining us? For the sake of all species, we must find a way.
Leaving Mývatn and back in a 4x4, we headed up another tortuous road. Given the conditions, it was hard to believe our guide's assurance that this gray, dismal day was just an illusion we could rise above. But the thick fog suddenly burst into clear, brilliant sunshine. A snow bus awaits those who enjoy their comforts, but for the more adventurous, sailing across the sea of snow under your own control is the only way to go. This is Vatnajökull, not only Europe's largest glacier, but bigger than all the rest combined. And this may represent many people's idea of a place called Iceland, but there's an old saying that Iceland is not a land of ice. The friendliness of the people has melted much of it away. In fact, only 12% of the island is covered in ice. The views from the top are absolutely breathtaking, the experience overpowering. All at once, its grandeur thrills you with wonder and fills you with peace. Mountain climber René Dumal said it well. You cannot stay on the summit forever, but there is an art of conducting oneself in the lower regions by the memory of what one saw higher up. When one can no longer see, one can at least still know.
Along Iceland's southeastern coast, the weight of the mighty glacier has sent tongues of ice descending toward the sea. Their meltwaters have created rushing rivers, and at the base of one wall of ice, a stunningly beautiful iceberg-filled lagoon. Weaving among these glistening ice sculptures, we realize that this remote northern island with a cold-sounding name had found a very warm spot in our hearts. It's the powerful beauty of this Nordic country. It's the people that proudly celebrate and sustain their ancient roots. It's the incredible wealth of wildlife. It's the way the midnight sun paints the shore. It's the hint of earth forces unimagined. Iceland hangs like a jewel from the necklace of the Arctic Circle, Europe's wild gem and a treasure for us all. This music complements a patriotic poem known by many Icelanders as their second national anthem. Although we may not understand the words, their sentiment is unmistakable.